everybody. Welcome back to another episode. Today, I have Anne Alexander-Sieder. I'm not sure if I
Cedar.
pronounced that. Cedar. Okay.
Like the tree.
There,
Yeah.
there we go. And Anne is a professional actor. You were, at least in the past, as far as I understand.
I still
you may
am.
be a
Yeah,
still,
I still am. Yeah.
So, Anne, welcome to the podcast. And definitely, I'm interested in understanding kind of the movie, TV show, Hollywood kind of background in there as well. But before delving into all of that, how are you doing today? And what are you up to today?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I'm doing well. Today is the first day that the sun has shined in weeks. And I'm in Europe, I'm in Munich, so it's very dark here. It starts getting dark like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm sure you know that coming from the Ukraine, it gets dark early in the winter. So It was nice to have the sunshine. What was I doing today? I gave a master class. A friend of mine is putting on an online festival for actors. So I was one of her coaches that came in and gave a master class to the other actors on the course. That was fun. Went really well. I had to really condense my workshop because my workshop is normally very long. So I had to cut it way, way down. And other than that, I had a coaching call, and that's about it.
So, and I didn't mean to say like today as in today, but I mean, that's good as well.
I'm very literal.
Yes, I meant like these days, like what's your life like these days? So it sounds like you're coaching and teaching and so on. What else kind of is involved in your life today?
Okay.
And again, not today literally, but these days.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'm an actor, so I'm auditioning. I'm not working on anything at the moment, although you can see me on Netflix at the moment in the Hallmark Christmas special, A Heidelberg Holiday. So for those of you who like those Christmas movies, that's a good one. And I live with my husband. We've been together for almost 30 years. We have a border collie. Her name is Zoe. We have a son. His name is Mark. He lives in LA. He's a Bavarian boy living in California. And he helps me actually with my coaching business. So he's awesome. He's my partner in Act Bold. Yeah. Which is great. I finally get to talk to him every day. The master plan works, Jerry.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming he's already an adult.
Yes, he is.
Right.
Yeah, he's 27. Yeah.
So it's definitely different than when the kids are teenagers.
For sure.
Could be a rough patch there, right?
Yeah, we had it. We definitely had a rough patch. But I think it's all, I think the kids go through that, so the parents are like, "Oh my God, when is this kid going to leave the house?" And
I
we
totally
need to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, I have 4 kids, 2 girls that are adults now, and 2 boys that are still in high school. And the girls, we've had some rough patches through their teenage years, and I came to that conclusion that it's almost like inevitable and it has to happen, because if it doesn't, that we want to keep them with us, right? But if it happens, then we're like, okay, you got to go.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I mean, because if my son hadn't gotten the way he got, then I would have really had a hard time letting go. But the way, he was really fighting for his independence and his freedom, which he should. That's what we want for them. Yeah. But it does make that separation easier, because you're like, looking forward to it. And then when you finally come back and they're adults, I'm sure it's a whole nother story. Like my relationship with my son now is we've always been really, really close, except for that, maybe 8-month period where we weren't.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to have an adult who is my child, but also my friend. Friend is such a weird word for a child, but we definitely are more equals now, I would say that. I mean, I'll always be his mom, and I will always have that relationship with him, but I can see the man that he is and the man that he's becoming, and I respect that man and I love that man. if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
No, it definitely does. And again, my girls are adults as well now, and we have such a better like when I say we, my wife and I, we have such a better relationship with them now than during those teenage years. Like now like you mentioned, we're both adults, so now we can have those adult conversations instead of
Yeah.
like teenage, parent to a teenager type of
Exactly.
conversations. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, could you share a little bit of your story? Kind of like where did you grow up? What was your early life like? And then kind of we'll pick it up from there.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Detroit, in a
Okay.
little area called Lafayette Park, which I always describe as Sesame Street in glass and steel. The whole Lafayette Park was designed by Mies van der Rohe, who is the godfather of the modern skyscraper. The glass and steel skyscraper that we all know today. That was the very first ones were designed by Mies van der Rohe. And the Barcelona chair as well was also his thing, that iconic leather, low-slung 70s type
Okay.
thing. And it was a great neighborhood. It was, like there was the local cop, Spitz. He was a motorcycle cop. He used to have candy in his saddlebags and let kids ride on the back. And the mailman, his name was Raymond, and he always brought a pack of Wrigley's gum and gave us a stick. And he used to pick us up and kiss us. I mean, all things that you would never allow today.
Yeah.
But they were honestly, truly innocent. There was never anything untoward that went on that shouldn't have gone on. And
Yeah.
people just knew everyone and people watched out for everyone. And it was a very progressive neighborhood. So it was really interracial, and women were professionals. And I was born in 1966. So that wasn't always the case back then. There were still a lot of really traditional housewives. But in Lafayette Park, there were women who were doctors and lawyers and judges, and these were the kids I was playing with. And I think that had a big influence on who I am and my view of the world. And my parents divorced when I was really young, when I was about 2. My dad always lived in the suburbs. So I kind of, had everything. I grew up all over Detroit. Both my parents moved around a lot. But when somebody asked me the question, as you did, that's the place that I think of as my home, where I grew up. Yeah.
And when you were growing up, was the auto industry already like a big boom? Like Detroit was the hub of auto industry at that time, or no?
I think so. I think it was already in decline when I was.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it wasn't. Yeah.
Just trying to kind of like.
Yeah, like get the.
Wait.
No, I think that was more like the 50s. I think because Detroit was definitely in decline when I was born and when I was growing up there. And Motown was big. I mean, it was Jackson 5, Diana Ross, Madonna, all of those people came out of Detroit, although she wasn't Motown. But yeah, those were the big influences. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
my
how-
stepfather, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You were gonna add a.
Well, I was
add to
going to say
that.
my stepfather had a restaurant called the Soup Kitchen.
Okay.
And it was a jazz and blues bar. So he was always bringing in, musicians, Spider Murphy, and all these big musicians who I unfortunately cannot name. But I definitely grew up with a lot of that influence. My mom was a caterer. After Lafayette Park, we ended up living in Indian Village, which I don't know. I think it's still called that, even though it's not very politically correct. But it was literally named after the different Native American tribes. So our street was Iroquois.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I grew up. I was born in Ukraine, but grew up pretty well. We moved to U.S. when I was 10, so the rest of the years that I grew up was in Rochester, New York, and upstate New York. There's a lot of Indian or Native American names as well, like the Canandaigua Lake and the Irondequoit and things like that.
Yeah.
So in high school, were you very social, very outgoing? Like, how did you like with your personality and so on, connect to wanting to be an actress?
Oh, that's a well, we're going to open a can of worms there, but what the heck? I By the time I got to high school, I had switched schools 18 times, like
Wow.
moving back and forth between my parents. There was a custody fight. I was a super rebellious teenager, and my mom left. My mom finally, I got to go live with her after a long time, and then she left when I was 16, and I was just kind of like a wild child on my own. And I was going to school at that time at a small all-girls Catholic school called Our Lady Star of the Sea in Grosse Pointe Shores. And I just could not relate to these sheltered girls' lives, you know. I mean, they'd be jumping up and down, yay, it's Friday. And I was like, please keep it down. I've got a hangover, you know. So I really, honestly, I felt very much like an outsider. Yeah, a misfit, an outsider. I didn't fit in. And a lot of it had to do with just having such a different life than everybody else. But I think that also contributed to my love of expression, understanding people, my compassion for different characters. I've always been super interested in psychology. And for a long time, when I was in middle school, I took sign language as what I thought was going to be a blow-off course, you know, just an easy A type thing. And I fell in love with it. I just thought it was so expressive, the way they move and, you know, and I just fell in love with it. And so for a long time, I wanted to be a child psychiatrist for the deaf. It's very specific.
Yeah.
And, but I had a very rocky relationship with my dad, and he said he wasn't going to pay for university. And so I was like, well, great. Then I get to be an actor, which is what you didn't want in the first place. and then that's kind of how that happened. I mean, I think if he had paid for university, that's probably what I would have done. And I'd still be living in Detroit, and I would have a very different life, and I'm sure it would be fulfilling in its own way, you know, but it would be very different than what I'm living now. And
so was it around like 18 that you kind of started going into the actress type of
I would say no, it was probably around 16, something like that. So I started taking acting classes even in Detroit. I had always been interested in it. I was the kid in the neighborhood. Like, I would go to sleepaway camp and come home like after having performed something at camp and get all the neighborhood kids to be singing, you know, food, glorious food, right? So organizing all these different things. And I think my parents maybe would have thought I would have ended up as a director, although maybe that plays more into my entrepreneurial side. I don't know, like bossing people around, maybe my husband would say, but or my son. But yeah, I never really considered it as an option until I felt like I didn't have another option. I didn't think it was like a job that people could do. But it turns out that my grandmother had been under contract, I think it was to MGM, which I didn't know when she was a young woman. And it had always been her dream to be an actor. And when, as I had said, my mother had left home when I was 16, so I was kind of on my own. And I graduated high school when I was 17. And so when I was 17, my grandma said, come to Chicago. There's so much more going on. And, you know, I will help you. I think she was giving me $100 a month back then. And that helped. I mean, it certainly didn't pay my rent or anything, but it was kind of like all I needed. I just needed someone to like extend something, you know, to like come here, do this. And that's what I did. And I ended up moving to Chicago and immediately, you know, got into Second City. And then I thought, oh, I don't know if I want to be a comedian. I want to be a real actress. And then I started, taking dramatic studies, like a conservatory style courses with a teacher who at the time was really well known. The mayor even gave him a key to the city. His name was Ted Liss. He's been dead for a long time though, and his school is now defunct. But it was at the time affiliated with the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. And so that's where I finished up my studies.
In London?
Yeah.
London, England, not London, Ontario, right?
Yes. London, England. Yeah.
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 So you already traveled even at that younger age out of the country back then?
So I was about 20, something like that, the first time I went to Europe, when I went to London. And then after that, I went with another friend of mine who was also in the school with me. And then we backpacked around Europe. We did the typical Eurail pass for 3 months and just had a great time. And for me, like when I put my feet on the ground in Italy, it was like, woof, I just felt like I'd been hit by something. And I spent the next 2 years after I got back to Chicago thinking about how can I get back to Italy. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, my sister was studying at the Sorbonne. So I went to go stay with her and her host family. I think I was there for like 6 months. I mean, when I look back, how crazy generous these people were not to have thrown me out after like 3 weeks. But I stayed there forever. And then it got to the point where it was like, wow, I really like Paris, but my heart is in Rome. I want to go to Rome. And so I thought, well, I'll just go try it. And if it doesn't work, I can always come back to Paris. And that's what I did. I went to Rome then for a couple of years. And I was acting there, doing a little bit of modeling, doing a little bit of like, I mean, I was young. I didn't need much money. I was kind of like just living on pizza and air, ice cream, gelato, right? And then I moved back to Chicago again. And then I went to NYU for film school. But then I met my husband. And so lots of different things. Just.
But it sounds like you've learned a lot about acting and so on outside of LA. Have you been in LA or Hollywood and worked there, or not really?
I have. But all of my work with that has been much more recent. I've been living in Europe I've lived in Europe pretty much my entire adult life, to be very honest. So when I went back to Chicago again, that's when my acting career started to really take off in Chicago, which is where I was living. I was SAG-AFTRA, which I think it's now just SAG, which is the Actors Union. And I was working on my equity card, which is the Theater Actors Union. And I was making enough money that I didn't have to have a side job, a bartending, waitering, whatever. And I even had my health insurance paid for by SAG. So it was all going well. And then, when you think life has a set path, that's when God throws a wrench at you. And it's just like, no. And my wrench was named Matthias. And I ended up moving to Germany. And actually, I would say for the first few years, I mean, I thought my career was over. We started a family right away. I always wanted to be a mom. I just didn't see how I was going to make it work. I didn't speak German at the time, and you have to be able to communicate, you have to be able to comprehend and communicate in some form within the language of the country. And I didn't speak it in the beginning, so I just didn't see how that would work. In the meantime, though, I had started to create, I had seen that there was a traveling American actors group that was based out of Munich, but I didn't know they were traveling. I didn't know it was a touring show and a touring group. So I had made an appointment. I went in, I auditioned for Grantley Marshall was his name. He was like, great, yeah, when can you start? And I was like, yeah, today, let's go. And he was like, fantastic, we're not starting today, but the next tour is blah, blah, blah. We'll be gone here, then we're going to go to, and I was like, what, wait, what? Tour? And he said, yeah, we're a touring company. And I was like, Oh, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that, and I can't. I have a baby at home. There's no way I can tour. And so that was kind of that.
Mm.
And I stood up and thanked him and apologized. And I was just about to close the door behind me when I thought, hey, do you know anybody who I should contact? And he gave me two names. And those two names really launched for me a really successful voiceover career in Germany. I was one of the top American female voices for a very long time. And that led to doing a lot of like presenting work, like doing the intros and outros for TV shows, quiz shows, corporate shows, like, interviews, those kind of things. And I did that for about 16 years, and it was great. It was lucrative. I had a lot of free time, but it wasn't very creatively fulfilling, to be very honest. And I was always looking for something. So I got into mosaics, I got into jewelry design, I was into interior design. I love painting, so I took up watercolor, then I took up oil. I mean, I was always looking for something to fill that void, and I didn't realize that I was looking to fill that void that acting had sustained in me. Until one day, I had a standing movie date with my son. He was about 16 at the time. And we used to go every Friday to see a movie in English. And he came to me the night before and he said, Mom, I think I'd just rather hang out with my friends tomorrow. I was like, oh, God, let me remove this dagger from my heart, right? But when I got over it and thought about it for a minute, I was like, wow, well, what do I want to do? I had never, I think my husband was away on a golfing trip or something that weekend. So it was like all of a sudden I had like the whole weekend to do whatever I wanted. And I had not had that in, since I was pregnant, basically, since I moved to Germany. And so all of a sudden I thought, well, I think I'd like to take an acting workshop. So I just, on a whim, Googled acting workshop, Munich, English. And one came up. There was a coach out of LA doing a workshop that was starting the next day. There was one spot open. I whipped out my credit card. I signed up for that sucker. And I went to it, and I left it 3 days later feeling like I had been trying to breathe underwater for 16 years. And it was like, this is my element. These are my people. This is where I want to be. And there was kind of no looking back. I was 47, and I didn't know how I was going to make it happen. I just knew that I needed to make it happen. And so that really sort of started this whole other phase of my life, my marriage, everything, which I would be happy to go into if you want me to.
Yeah, definitely. So how, maybe before that, we'll do like a segue and then come back to it.
Sure.
So you grew up in U.S., Chicago, Detroit, New York City, that kind of thing, or those, and wherever else, right? But then you moved to Germany, and then lived there for a long time. What would you say as far as cultural differences? What is U.S. like compared to Germany, or Germany compared to U.S.?
Americans, or at least when I lived in America, Americans were like proud individualists. And that was always a huge part of our identity as Americans was to be like you. And Americans, when I grew up, were much more tolerant than they are now. I mean, Democrats and Republicans used to get married, which is unthinkable today.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I moved to Germany, I mean, I've been here almost 30 years. In fact, I'm getting my citizenship in next week, finally. Awesome. Yeah. One thing that's, I have to say, like when I first started dating my husband, I came home to Chicago and I told a girlfriend of mine that I met this guy, this German guy, on my way to Rome, and because I was visiting some friends down there, and I really liked him. And, I was saying, I don't know, I really like this guy. I think that there's something really special here. And she said to me, does he know you're Jewish? And I was like, whoa. It never even occurred to me to say it, And then, because that was the America that I felt like I grew up in. And I also had this very strict idea of what I thought Germany was. In fact, the first time that I was in Europe, I went around Germany, didn't go through it. I didn't want to set foot in Germany, so it figures I marry a German, right? But, and then when I moved here, I just found, because of their history, they are so aware of any kind of hate leanings and where that can go, that it is, just getting my citizenship. I've had to sign this one paper, like ticking off all the boxes that I am not a member of all of these right extremist groups or left extremist groups. I've had to do the same document 3 times. I mean, that's how hyper aware they are of it. So there is that. And yet I really feel like, I've lived in a lot of places, and I think people deep down are people. And I think we would all just be so much, it makes me a little emotional, I have to say. I think we would all just be so much better served by trying to look for the similarities instead of always trying to find the differences. Because we all love our moms and our kids. We all want to lead a happy life. We all deal with imposter syndrome and insecurities and fears. We all struggle with the very same things, whether we grew up in Bangladesh, in Berlin, or in Boise, Idaho. It doesn't matter. We just want to have our lives mean something to the people who mean something to us. And I think if we could. Yeah, it makes me emotional. I think also as well because of the state of America. It really crushes me at the moment. I find it very sad. But
yeah, do you think it's less to do with the individual people and more to do with, I don't know, like the invisible hand or whatever you want to call it, like people behind the scenes that are I don't know what the right word would be, like controlling or influencing people to be divided, to be against each other. So it's like instead, I think average person on the street, like you said, I mean, we just want to live. We just want to like love our family and just do our thing, whatever it is. We don't care about like fighting or like even the whole war in Ukraine. Like I'm Ukrainian. Like what's that war for? Like I'd rather live in peace than be at war. But there's like powers that want to conquer or do this or that or whatever. And I feel like those powers are on all kinds of sides kind of pinning us against each other. And then people like everyday people are the ones that are suffering through that whole thing. Yeah.
United we stand, divided we fall.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Divide and conquer. And that's
yeah,
what
exactly.
I mean, it's what's happening. It's
So
happening here too.
yeah, I think it's like individuals. I think we're empowered when we gain information, when we gain knowledge, but there needs to be wisdom because like at first I feel like I'm very logical and not so emotional, and I thought that through logic you can find the truth, but that's not always the case either. Like because you can be given a lot of information, some of it not true, and come to some conclusion that's not true because of the input information that you're getting. So you can have perfect logic, but if you don't have the right info, you're going to still draw the wrong conclusion.
Absolutely. It's
So it's like,
confirmation bias, no? And we're in
yeah,
that loop because nobody's even getting their news from mainstream media anymore. So it's either YouTube or Fox or CNN or right. It's there aren't that many there aren't that many sources where you can get like actual facts that are unbiased.
but would you say even mainstream, they're steering people into a certain direction as well?
I mean, yeah, I think you're hard pressed to find an unbiased opinion. Like you
Yeah,
can tell as soon as someone opens their mouth in the news today or on YouTube or wherever you're getting your information, you can tell who they're voting for. And that shouldn't be the case. People should just be reporting the facts
right.
and then let people come to their own conclusions. But I also think, I mean, honestly, I remember years ago, thinking like this whole obsession with reality, Jerry Springer, I don't know if you remember him, but like the sensationalism, the entertainment value of things, as opposed to like it's that immediate hit of gratification. So yeah, titillate
Yeah,
me now. Like it's fantastic. Instead of thinking like, let's maybe not watch this girl beat up this other girl who maybe or maybe was not hitting on her boyfriend, right? Let's maybe
yeah,
not tune into those things or support that kind of behavior. Even though
right.
it is fascinating, I get it,
Yeah,
but we have a choice to watch that stuff or not. We have a choice.
right. I mean, like what I'm based on what you're saying, like what comes to mind for me is more like not to react to whatever we hear right away, but actually like get a little bit more information about that thing, whatever it is, and from whatever source it's coming from. We don't have to assume that whoever said something is automatically that's the truth. We can do a little bit of finding out, like, where is this coming from? What's the opposite point of view of this? Like,
Yeah.
where
But
are
it's
these things?
work.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
work, yeah.
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
we are, myself included, lazy. That's work. So I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
Google this, and I'm gonna have to Google that, and
Right. I think that's where the issue. At the end of the day, I think it's all on us anyway. Like we need to figure out what it is, and there are forces working against us, like you mentioned, divide and conquer, and so on.
yeah,
But we need to, like, if we care, we need to really get to the bottom of whatever that subject, that topic, the issue, whatever it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
But yeah, so we can come out of that topic.
It's a dangerous topic these days. Yeah.
No, I mean we can talk more about it, but maybe we'll give it a break for a minute. You mentioned you being Jewish and you married a German, and he's an actual German or just
He's German.
okay. And so what is that clash of cultures or traditions like? Like I don't know, some people are very Jewish. They have very, very like traditional values or traditional things like traditions around the house and so on. I'm not sure like your background there, but what was it like for you coming from a Jewish home and then marrying a German?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that like?
So, both my parents were Reform, which is like the least observant form of
Mhm.
Judaism. But still, we did Hanukkah, not Christmas. Although with my dad, we did Christmas, and he's Jewish too. So, but he married a Christian Scientist, and but even before he married her, that was. So, what was it like? Well, first of all, the conversation was interesting when I told him, because my girlfriend scared me. Like when she said that, I was like, oh my, now, oh wow, I guess I better have this conversation with him. And I remember like sitting him down, and it's like, I have to tell you something. It's not that big of a deal, but maybe you're gonna think it's a big deal. But and it was like I was stuttering, and he's like, what? He didn't know if I had AIDS or something. I mean, like something horrible. Yeah. And I was like, I'm Jewish. And he's like, uh-huh. And what did you want to tell me? And I was like, okay. Well, now I feel like an idiot, but okay, good. That was a good reaction. And that was kind of the end of that. And I think it only really came up again, with our son. But my husband is very tolerant. For me, I mean, I don't know how much you know about Judaism, but the religion passes through the mother.
Yes.
And,
yeah. I heard
and in
that.
Christianity, the religion passes through the father. So my husband is, Protestant. He's evangelical, is what they call it here in Germany, but it's Protestant in America. So, so he had his belief and I had my belief, but I'm pretty strong. So I was like, well, if this were 70 years ago, he'd be shipped off just like me. So he's Jewish. So, and I think I would say I'm culturally Jewish. I would never turn my back on and say that I wasn't Jewish, but I don't believe in man-made religion. So that maybe that's a better way to put it. I believe, for me, I don't want to disparage anybody's religion, but for me, the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Quran, whatever, it's all for me a big game of, not a game, but a big, like telephone, like operator. Do you know that game where you whisper someone's down
the message
line?
gets lost in the translation and so on.
Yeah, I mean, God did not write any of those words. They were all interpreted through many, 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 many men. So who knows where the truth is in that? I don't know. I believe you need to be good to people. I believe there is a code of ethics that, sure, we can call it the Testament, God, I forgot the name of it.
The Torah?
The commandments.
Or the Ten Commandments, yeah.
The Ten Commandments, right. So, sure, we can, there is a code of ethics, no matter where you come from, no matter how you were raised. You don't kill, you don't steal, you don't, take what isn't yours. Those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
And I think that those things are there for a reason, and whether that came from God or came from keeping society in a cohesive group, we are herd animals. We are, we are community centered. And so in order to live within a community, you have to have certain rules that are okay for everybody. Otherwise, you end up in feudal states, with a fiefdom and everything, and a king, and
yeah. I think kind of my personal opinion on the subject is that all people actually have faith, and by faith I mean like belief in something. Even the atheists believe that there is no God. It's still a belief. It's not like I can prove it 100% in whatever. Like, sure, there's like arguments, there's debates, there's whatever between religion, non-religion, and so on. But I don't know. My opinion is ultimately every person still believes in something, even if that something is nothing. Like, they still believe that that's the case, that that's the reality. So it's more like each person has to come to their own conclusion on what their belief is.
Yeah. I mean, I do believe in a higher power. I don't know what it is, but I know, like, after my son was born, I almost died. And I was in a coma an induced coma for about 3-4 weeks. And there was a point there where I was very close to dying, I guess. But I felt like I was being given a choice. It was, I didn't hear words. I didn't see a light. My grandma didn't come to get me. There was none of that. But I very clearly felt I was being given a choice. That it was not from within. It was from outside of me. And I've had lots of experiences, to me, where there's proof of something out there.
Yeah.
And it's still just a belief. I can't prove it, but it's my belief.
Right, but it's those personal experiences that
Yeah.
kind of reassure you in what you believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, my background is I come from a Christian family, but you mentioned kind of like how Christianity comes through the father and so on. Like my belief about that is that it's still an individual choice. Like you can have Christian parents, but them being Christian doesn't like save you or anything like that. You have to believe it yourself. You have to come to that conclusion yourself. It's not just passed down. I mean, maybe some Christians or different forms of Christianity believe that that's how it works. Like I believe that each individual person has to come to that choice themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as being Jewish and having a German husband, like it sounds like there were not that many, like as far as clashes of cultures or
No, we
anything like
never
that.
had
There's
any
like
problems with
nothing
that.
like that.
No.
So yeah, and again, I'm kind of interested in different cultures and so on. Being Ukrainian, living in U.S., kind of being around all kinds of people from different walks of life, different countries and so on. So it's that's kind of fascinates me a little bit. Speaking of Germany, one thing when I was just like out of high school around that time, there was a castle that at a company that I used to work with, they were printing, I don't know why. And it was that German castle. I forget the name of it.
Neuschwanstein.
Probably.
The one that the
yeah.
Disney castle is based on.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Neuschwanstein.
You probably have been to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
many
have,
times.
yeah.
What's
Not many
your
times,
impression
just
of?
once.
Okay.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. It. I mean, there's so much. I mean, how often do you get back to Europe?
I haven't actually. Well, I've been to. Okay, my story or parts of the story is when we were moving to U.S. We didn't just fly from Ukraine to U.S. We had to go to Austria. We spent about a month in Austria. Then from Austria we went to Italy, spent about 2 or so months in Italy, and then finally flew from Italy to U.S. So kind of, at least I have at that age a little bit of experience of going through Europe. Since then, I've been to Switzerland, part of like a work trip for a week. And I think that's pretty much it as far as my kind of traveling Europe time.
Okay.
We have 4 kids. They're all growing up. So now we're thinking like, okay, now it's our time to travel, like in the next few years or whatever. So then we'll start traveling more. But yeah. So you're going to say something about that.
No, I was just. I mean, there are so many parts of Europe that are literally like somebody opened a book and said, and here's the fairy kingdom. And it's exactly how you would picture it, with green rolling hills and a castle up on the top and, this medieval town down below. And there's that, and there's also the dirty, gritty Berlin and Paris and London, which are amazing, thriving, vibrant cities, but they're also cities. These are cities. And I mean, we live in Munich, so we We're very central, and we travel a lot. I would, I mean, I had already seen a lot of Europe before moving to Germany, but not to the extent that, that I do now. Like we go to Mallorca a lot, but okay, it's like for Americans going to Florida, right? Or to the Caribbean, maybe, I don't know. But Mallorca is an island off the coast of Spain. And so, or Italy, we go to Italy a lot. I mean, actually everywhere. Austria is like an hour and a half away. So we used to go skiing a lot in the Alps here, but now we like skiing in Canada better. The skiing is a lot better there.
At the Rocky Mountains?
Yeah, we go to Whistler.
Okay.
And but we love to travel. We just got back from Bali. We went to Bali for our wedding anniversary this summer. And
so from everywhere you've traveled, what's your most favorite place? Or couple places?
Yeah. I'm one of those people that I can, like a city. I like a city. I'm a city girl. So anywhere that has like a vibrant kind of an art life going on, I can always see myself there. And I think this is why I lived I lived in London, I lived in New York, I lived in Rome, I lived in Paris, I lived in Munich, I lived in Berlin, so Detroit, Chicago.
Yeah.
So I like cities. I don't know why, but Moscow is jumping in my head right now. Moscow is really cool. It was like unexpectedly cool. The people were really friendly, and I don't know how they would be now considering everything that's going on, but it's huge. It's huge, the city. Normally we walk everywhere, and Moscow is just so spread out, but it's beautiful, that red square with that really colorful church, and it's all there. It also has the parts of it that look like exactly what you would think of when you think of Russian gulags and things like that. And there were some people like that, but for the most part, we really enjoyed ourselves. I was also in St. Petersburg years before that. That was beautiful. Copenhagen, San Gimignano in Italy is like literally when I was saying to you like that the storybook, like somebody opened it up and said, "Here's the fairy kingdom." That was what I had in my head when I was thinking of was San Gimignano in Italy, which is a Tuscan village. So, there's lots. I like new things. Yeah.
Yeah. So just kind of when you travel, you just like to see like structures, buildings, like whatever it is, that kind of thing. Like what drives you to want to travel?
Food. Food. New experiences. Yeah, my husband is an architect, although I think I'm probably more into it than he is. He just sort of became an architect because he had a friend who was older and that's what he was doing. And so he thought, oh, well, he's got a good life. I'll do that. But I'm really passionate about interior design and, I studied it. And even as a kid, I knew that the building that I lived in was designed by Mies van der Rohe. These were things that I knew. So I don't know. So that does fascinate me. And I love seeing the different architecture. Even within Germany, when you go from one region to the next, the architecture changes, which is super interesting,
Yeah. What do you think of, people say the Dark Ages or medieval ages compared to now that, there was lack of information or knowledge and that kind of thing, but yet they built these really cool buildings, really cool designs, and now for the most part it's just kind of square, rectangular buildings, So what do you think of the architecture of the past?
I mean, the craftsmanship,
right?
Because that's what it used to be about, was craftsmanship. That was what was valued. And that's how people would show their wealth, was by how well something was crafted, how much detail was put into something. Intarsia, I think it's called something else in English, but Do you know what I'm talking about? The wood that you inlay it into, like marquetry. So when you've seen like an old dresser or an old armoire, and it has designs of flowers and leaves that are wood inlaid in the wood.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that, right? That just took who knows how long to do, and the amount of craftsmanship and artistry that went into it. And I think, today artistry is different today. People are more into size. They want a big house. I think people are more apt to have like a big sort of a modern house, and they're less interested in having something that's unique. And I just think the values have changed,
Mm-hmm.
Also, artists used to be really revered. Like they were really looked well upon, and now artists are not. People don't have patrons anymore to support an artist, there's no art is getting slashed from schools and city budgets, and it's just not appreciated in the same way that it was back then.
Right. Yeah. So just kind of looking over my questions that I didn't even ask.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so things you mentioned in your kind of bio and so on, like overcoming limiting beliefs, building on life that fits, making space for your passions and so on. So maybe talk a little bit about that, like related to your coaching and so on.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it helps if I kind of explain how I bridged that gap of how am I going to do this to becoming a professional actor.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I finished that one workshop, I was like, great, I need more of this. I haven't acted in 16 years. I need more training so that I can get confidence in my skills again, and also start to meet other actors who are the good agents, who are the casting directors, who, what productions are going on, all of those things that you need and that you get from a community. And when I looked around, there really wasn't anything. So I thought, oh, wow. So I started to look, okay, what can I do? I can go to LA, I can go to New York, I can go to London and get amazing training. But that's obviously expensive and time consuming, and I would be away from my family and. Yeah. I thought, it's not really feasible. And so my only other option, because I had decided I was going to do this. I was going to return to acting. So like not doing it was not an option. Mm-hmm. So my only other option was, I thought, well, what if I bring the coaches to me? And then just do it in such a way that I can, find a few other actors to split the cost with me of these coaches. And that ended up being like this amazing thing on so many different levels. First of all, I was bringing amazing top-level acting coaches to Munich, and finding other actors to split the cost. So for the most part, for 9 out of 10 workshops that I would organize, I would not only get free training, because I would build in the cost of everything, right? Mm-hmm. But I was, in many cases, also making an income, like of, $1,000, $1,500 per workshop. So it became also, it was very lucrative. It was like, in the sense of I was learning for free, and I was making money, and I was building this community, and I was learning how to become a professional actor at this stage of my life. So this is why the name of this particular program that I'm starting now is called Passion Project to Pro. Mm-hmm. So how to bridge your passion into something that is a truly meaningful part of your life, and meaningful in every way, so that Maybe it replaces what you are doing. Maybe it's just something that, it's all depending on how you want to do it. So whether that's on the weekends or it is something that entirely replaces the job you hate, whatever that may be. So that was kind of how I returned to acting. And I did that. For me, the goal was not to make money. Yes, that was a great benefit, but that wasn't my main goal. My main goal was getting the training that I wanted. And then after that, I did that for about 2 years. And then I thought, okay, I'm good. Like, I'm gonna do all the things that, an actor does. I'm gonna go get an agent. I'm gonna go get on the casting director's list and radars and all that. And I did that, and I was doing all the things I had been doing back in Chicago when I was a professional actor back then. And I very quickly realized that there were a couple of pieces missing here. First of all, I was 47. Mm-hmm. So doors don't open for a woman who's 47 like they do for a woman who's 21, 22. It's just a different world. And there was also the naivete, although I would say I still can be pretty blue-eyed about things. But there was this naiveness that was quicker to wear off, and I very quickly realized that if I didn't take the business of being an actor more seriously, then I was never going to have more than these sporadic roles that weren't necessarily even roles that lit me up. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I really started to learn about the business of being an actor. I really dove into what does branding mean? How do I brand myself as an actor? How do I market myself? How do I make sure that my marketing materials are on brand? How do I network in a way that feels good, that doesn't feel transactional, where I'm actually building relationships with people? And now it kind of comes full circle. So one thing I had learned through the workshop through organizing these workshops, it was a great way to make connections with people that I wouldn't normally have a chance to make connections to. So then I started organizing workshops with casting directors. Mm-hmm. And because it gave me a chance to have conversations with them at eye level as just two human beings. Not just please give me a job, please consider me, which is generally the conversation that actors have with casting directors. And it just changed the dynamics of everything. And then I started doing that more regularly, but it was purely a networking thing. It wasn't so much about, for me, it was never really about the money. I'm an artist at heart. So, and luckily, for whatever, better or worse, we're not hurting. So it was never about that. But the beauty of it is that you can use it however you need to use it. If you need an extra $1,000 a month and you're interested in learning how to cook Thai food, well, there's a way to make that into a workshop or into a retreat or into, an experience. So, I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah. No, and I'm thinking more kind of from, let's say my daughter's perspective or my son's perspective. They're very artistic as well. And my second daughter, she wanted to be an actress. I think she's still, I don't know if it's an actress or a singer or some form in there. And it sounds like she still wants to pursue that. So I'm just thinking, from her perspective, what should she do to accomplish her goal of whether it's becoming a singer or a songwriter or an actress? What would be ideal steps to take? And she's 21 right now, 22.
She's okay. So training. First of all, where do you live?
So we're in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay, so Atlanta would be your biggest market. Does she, is she also in Charlotte?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Charlotte is still a fairly big city, and it also offers acting training. So I would, if I were her, I would just start looking in Reddit groups, like asking on Facebook. There are Facebook groups for actors in Charlotte specifically, and start asking, who are your favorite teachers? You know, who are your favorite coaches? What are the best places where I can get some training? And sign up for a workshop. There are also plenty of places online I can recommend if you want. But what she needs to do is see if she actually likes acting.
Yeah.
I mean, because a lot of people like the idea of being an actor, but the idea of being an actor and the reality of being an actor are two different things. It's not this glamorous, amazing lifestyle.
Maybe go into a little bit more details in terms of what is it like being an actor or actress? Like what's the behind the scenes? What is involved in terms of work and relationships and communication with whoever you need to communicate with, the emotions of highs and lows and all of that.
Okay. So this goes back to my other thing. So I actually teach actors how to get control over their careers. For me, it's based on 5 pillars. It's mindset, branding, marketing, networking, and community. They all work together holistically. You have to understand what it is that you bring to the table that nobody else brings to the table, even though there may be 200 other women who are really similar to me. So what sets me apart? What sets you apart? What sets your daughter apart? Understanding what that thing is that I like to call your unicorn factors, and then infusing all of your marketing with that. So for actors, marketing there's macro marketing, that's your headshots, your show reels, your casting profiles, all of the typical things that you would think of if you think of those things, as a non-actor. But, these are like the tools of our trade. This is how we get work. Mm-hmm. And then there's the micro marketing, which is all of your messaging, right? Those are the emails you're sending out. Those are the conversations that you're having at film premieres and at festivals, or even at workshops. Those are when you go, used to be in the day, you used to go see casting directors. Now it's very rare that you go see a casting director, but you may have a quick Zoom or something like that. So how are you communicating, and is that on brand to who you are? And do you know what your brand is? Are you trying to project something that you would like people to think of you? Because that does not work. It may work for theater. Theater, you can be very broad. You can play a lot of different types of roles. But for film and television, especially today, you need to be authentically you. Mm-hmm. Because audiences are too savvy. They get it. They know when someone's faking something, when something isn't real. We all have a sense of that now. And even if you look like the films of the 80s even, which isn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things, the style of acting was very different. So there's all of that together, right? And for me, the 2 biggest skills that an actor needs to have is you need to be able to act. We are living in the age of the Olympian actors, right? There are so many good actors out there. So if you're not like A-game top, great, then either get the training or get out, because it's not going to happen. Because there are just too many who are, and who are that passionate about it. So that's number 1. But the other skill that an actor needs to have is the skill of being able to pitch yourself in all sorts of different situations. Because when you're not acting or working on your craft, you are trying to get a job. And so whether that's, submitting yourself to get an agent, or getting on a casting director's radar, updating casting directors, reaching out to directors, producers, showrunners, screenwriters, It's kind of, I mean, there's a lot to it. Yeah. So,
And then what about like the actual production of acting, recording at the time? Like what is that like?
so like being on a film set, what is that like?
Yes. Right.
Okay. So, well, again, it can vary very much depending on what kind of a film set. Independent film, like, there's like but like a typical thing is you show up, there's some sort of a trailer, right? There are the actors' trailers. Depending on how big your part is, how big the budget is for the show, depends on how great your trailer is, basically. And you will have already been fitted. Like, so you will have already shown up a few days ahead of time, sometimes weeks ahead of time, to be fitted for your wardrobe. Sometimes you'll have gone through full makeup and hair, and all of that needs to get approved. Like, for example, the Hallmark Christmas movie that's on Netflix right now. Everything. Hallmark has to approve everything. So I literally had to try on everything that the wardrobe people were thinking of. And then we were trying different hairstyles and different jewelry even. And all of that had to be photographed, documented, sent, okayed, or nixed. And then you show up and you have to know your character. You have to know what you want. You have to know what the objective is. It's also great if you understand how you fit into the scheme of, the grand scheme of the story itself. Are you a driving factor in that story, or are you somebody who is there to affect the main character? Because that will also affect how you act, right? And then, it's a lot of waiting on film sets. There's a lot of light setup and, a lot of like day for night and night for day. Sometimes you'll be shooting something at 4 a.m. and it's supposed to be 4 p.m. and you're dead tired and, you just want to go to sleep. Or, sometimes you're shooting something it's supposed to be warm and yet then there was this horrible cold snap and it's freezing outside and you're standing there in this, tiny, not warm clothing. And, every time that the take is over, that as soon as the clapper comes down, somebody's throwing a blanket on you and putting a warm tea in your hands. And you live for the moments in between. That's really what it is. You live for the moments in between when you can make that connection to your character and to the other person who your character is relating to. And when you really have a great connection, then all of that fades away for a minute or two. And then it's over. And then you do it again. Yeah.
So what drives you to want to continue to act? Like what's like a driving factor for you?
I am endlessly fascinated with humanity. I'm a really curious person. I am also kind of obsessive. So I will find an interest and it's like, I want to know everything. And you can never know everything about acting and becoming a better actor, because there are always, first of all, everybody's different. So every new role is going to have its own set of challenges. We all wear masks as we go through this life. And we all have layers, many, 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 many layers. And I always like to think that we are all of us, like faceted diamonds. And all of the different facets represent a life we could have lived had things, had you taken a right instead of a left. And for me as an actor, when you think of a diamond, a faceted diamond, like your typical, like an engagement ring type diamond, the facets on top represent kind of like me, what you're seeing now, me as I move through the world, right? But as you move down the diamond and the facets get smaller and smaller and until it comes to a point at the bottom, those are all the facets of me that relate more or less to the different characters. So some characters, it's pretty easy to slip into them. I get it. And others I have to really like, where is that? Find that piece of me that really identifies with that person, that really can drop into that and shine up that facet, even if it's just teeny tiny, and like hold it up to the light, let it catch the light. And I just find that endlessly fascinating, you know.
Yeah.
And there's that feeling when everything drops away. Doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, it's magic, and it's that I think most actors are always like in search of again. It's almost like a drug. It's like you want that hit of that magic.
So I was just thinking about Jim Carrey, and I heard a story that he would like get into the character. He would like be in the character while recording, whether the camera is rolling or not, like throughout the shooting part. So when people would come and talk to him, he would reply as though that character instead of himself.
Yeah.
What's your view on that? Yeah.
Yeah. That's method. That's like, the typical method. Like when you think of method acting, that's method acting.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done it. I've acted with people who do it. I find it kind of off-putting, because it is still acting. You don't have to become that other person. I don't know. I mean, I guess if it gets the performance that you were after, Daniel Day-Lewis is another one who's famous for that.
But it seems like there could be a danger to it as well, where you become all these characters and then you potentially lose who you really are because you just take on all these other characters. I mean, I'm a novice. I don't know anything about it, but yeah.
Yeah, and there's also the danger that you can do some real damage to your family, to the people that love you and you love, because you may not be treating them like, I know Jared Leto was another one who does that, and I guess he was just insufferable, on the set of was it Joker? It wasn't Joker, but he played some sort of a superhero type thing. I can't remember what it was, but just the stories that you would hear, that how awful he was, because his character was awful, and that was his foil for it. And I was like, I don't know, dude. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So overcoming limiting beliefs, what can you kind of say about that topic?
Whoa, a lot. I mean, when you have big dreams, right? And I think most people have dreams, but they're not always big dreams. But when you have big dreams, you're always confronted by limiting beliefs. But the truth is, no matter what your dreams are, you are going to have things that come up, because we have this part of our subconscious that just wants to keep us safe. Mm-hmm. It is not interested in your big dreams. It just wants things to stay the same and be safe. And that voice will often show up as logic. So it'll sound something like this. Well, I can't do that because XYZ. I don't have time right now. I don't have the money right now. If I did that, then this would happen. It's always, and at the end of that because is your limiting belief. So for actors, it shows up a lot like, well, I can't submit to agents right now because I'm waiting for my showreel material from this film that I shot 5 years ago and I still haven't got it. And I need to have the showreel material so that they can see that I can act, but they won't give it to me. And so I can't. And so it's this whole thing. And I, as soon as you are giving outside circumstances or people that much power over your life, you have given away your own power. So I think, first of all, question your beliefs because that's all they are. As we talked about this earlier, right?
Yeah.
A belief is just a belief. It doesn't make it so. We believe the sky is blue. Is it blue? Is it? Is it blue right now? Not right now. Right now, I would say it's pretty dark, for me. How about when a tornado's coming? Then it's kind of green. How about when it's stormy? Then it's steel gray. How about when, it depends, like blue is, we see it as blue because it's refracted that way. But does another animal see it differently because they have different kind of a vision, right? I mean, it is just a belief. And then you think it's true because you've never questioned it. So one of my limiting beliefs when I returned to acting, even though I said I'm going to do this, I'm doing this, was I'm too old. I'm going to make a fool of myself. I don't speak German perfectly. These are all things that are holding me back. And the truth of the matter is, first of all, don't waste your time worrying about things you can't change. I can't change how old I am. It is what it is. I can't change it. So embrace it and get on with it,
Yeah.
I can't change the fact that I don't speak German perfectly. I can work on my accent, but you are always going to hear that I have an accent because I moved to Germany when I was in my late 20s. And so you're never going to mistake me for a German. And so get on with it. So the things that you often think are what are holding you back are often your superpower when it comes to ourselves. And I mean, I can continue to talk about this. I have a lot to say about it, but yeah, I think that's kind of the gist of it. Is a limiting belief is really just that. It is a belief that you choose to believe in, and you can also choose to let it go. Yeah. And something here, I just said this one. This is maybe will help. There's an exercise: catch, cancel, correct. So, do you know, this is mind-blowing, that we as human beings have 12,000 thoughts in our head, go through our head per day, roughly. And of those 12,000 thoughts, roughly 9,000 of those are negative, which is just crazy. And whatever you listen to is what will become stronger. So one thing I always recommend is just for a week or even a day, if a week is too long, keep track of all of the negative thoughts that you have. Like, for example, I just forgot my keys. Stupid, right? Or, I want another cookie after dinner. Fat, right? So all of these things that like we say to ourselves when I didn't get an audition. You suck. I didn't book a role. Same thing, right? Why did she get that? I should have gotten that. All of those things that we say that are these negative thoughts. So just keep a log of that. You would be amazed. So then once you understand and once you become aware of these negative thoughts, then you can begin to cancel them. So for me, I just say that does not serve me. No, thank you. But that's what I say. So say whatever works for you. and then correct it. So, for example, you forgot your keys. You're not stupid. You're human. Human beings forget things, you know? You have other things on your mind. You're a busy person. You've got a lot of responsibilities and priorities. And it's okay. Just go back in the house and get them, right? So
Right.
that's really what it boils down to, is becoming aware, canceling it out, and correcting it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, related to thoughts, I think there was a study or something like that where in order to overcome like a negative thought, you need like, or it was more to do with two people. Let's say if you say something negative to to one person, they need to hear, I think it's like 7 or 8 things positive to overcome that one negative thing. Something to that effect.
Could
where
be.
where
Yeah.
the negative has such a greater effect than the positive. Like we can hear a bunch of positive things about ourselves and kind of just brush it off, but we hear one negative thing and it's like, becomes
Can
like
eat
a
away
big
at
deal.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. So,
Yeah.
so true. And I think that also goes back to the whole kind of like, reptilian brain. It used to serve us more to be aware of the negatives that were going on around us. That's how we used to stay alive, right? That's how you didn't get eaten by a tiger or, you know. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways of looking at it. Like as we grow up, we need to be careful with things, and that's probably maybe that's where we learn. Like, if you touch a hot stove, you're gonna get burned, but you don't know until you touch it, and you touch it, and then you're like, okay, now I'm afraid of that, so now I'm gonna be more cautious. Actually, that kind of reminds me of another thing. You mentioned you're very curious, right? And you're still curious. Do you think? I almost have this kind of it's definitely not empirical study or anything like that, but a one-off where are there people who are adults that are not so curious? Could it be that something happened throughout their childhood where they did something, they were curious about it, they did something, and then they were like pushed down or punished for that, and then after repeatedly like being curious, they kind of get shut down, and then eventually they grow up and like, okay, I'm not going to do anything, not going to be curious at all because
Sure.
if I'll have this negative repercussion for being curious. I wonder if there's something to it. I guess for myself, I probably want to do a little bit more research on that.
Yeah.
Just
See, you're
curious.
curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think anybody who has a podcast is curious. Anybody who wants to interview other people is curious. I mean, you're curious, right? That's
Yeah.
why you do it. And I know a lot of people who are not. My husband, I wouldn't say, is particularly curious. He's got a couple of things that he's really into, and he's happy with that. And we are night and day, my husband and I. And it's okay. And he's happy with that. My curiosity is always like burning a hole in me. It's like it starts a new passion, and then I get super into it, and then I want to like master it and get better and better and better, and it becomes this like I get very obsessive about it. I'm probably slightly OCD, about those kind of things. I don't know. I think there's probably peace in just not being so curious.
Well, I wonder how much nature versus nurture has that effect. Like, is it more like, okay, I was born not curious, or I was through the environment I grew up in, I'm not curious. Like, I wonder, like, which they probably both have some effect on it, or a lot of effect on it.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And then there's different personality types: introverted, extroverted. It almost seems like extroverts are more curious than introverts. Maybe they are, maybe they're
See,
not.
I think of
know.
myself as an extroverted introvert. I can be an extra, I can have a conversation with somebody I don't know. I can put myself out there, but like I have no problem for days at a time like not talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't thrive on the interactions as much. I do, but it's not something I need all the time. Whereas I think a true extrovert needs the interactions on a constant basis. They really need it. And I don't. I need my son. I need my husband. I need my dog. And I'm kind of good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, just, I guess, no, because I thought maybe I'm not as curious anymore, but maybe it's the topics. Maybe it's like the part, like the subject matter. Like some people are curious about one thing, but not curious at all about another thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that
true.
has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah.
So, Anne, yeah, thank you so much for having this conversation. Share whatever you want to share about your programs or how people can reach you, what you have to offer, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are an actor, who knows, there might be some out there listening. I help actors get control over their careers, understand what they need to do so that they can get more opportunities to better roles. And if you are a person who is curious, I've been doing that for years. I've been, coaching actors for years. But if you are a person who is curious and the idea of turning what you love into what you do without having to be an expert influencer or coach, if that's something that appeals to you, I'm actually starting a brand new program called Passion Project to Pro, where I will be leading people from their idea of what their first workshop experience event will be, all the way through their very first workshop, and then a debrief afterwards to figure out, what went really well and what they could do better next time, so that at the end of this, they will have even earned back their investment from the program. And you can get a hold of me. I am at actboldtraining.com. That's my website. My name is Anne Alexander-Sieder. It's spelled Sieder, but it sounds like the tree. And you can find me everywhere. I'm on all the places. And I'd love to hear from you.
And do you offer this online to anybody and everybody, or is it local, kind of in-person based?
Nope, these are all online. Yeah,
Okay.
I have for Get Better Roles, I have clients in 10 different countries right now. And we always have a private community. And then, of course, we have coaching calls every week as well. And I will be running Passion Project to Pro the same way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and again, thank you so much for sharing your story, a little bit about your story and the things that you do, and a little bit insight into acting. So, yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.